everyone, my name is Kelsey Johnson-Kaiser. Thanks for having me today. I am going to be talking about school-age programs and services and some of the things that I have learned since graduating from library school that have been really useful to me in terms of the way I approach services to all populations, but that I think can be particularly useful when looking at school-age kids. So I'll just give a little bit of background about myself. I graduated from SLIS in 2013 and started out as the Youth Services Director at the Columbus Public Library, which is in Columbus, Wisconsin, just outside of Madison. So I did everything from ages 0 to 18 there, programming, partnerships, spaces, collections, you name it, I was working on it. From there, I went to the La Crosse Public Library in La Crosse, Wisconsin, where I worked with Marge, and I really did focus in on school-age programs and services there. That was kind of the main age group that I focused on. I worked on partnerships around school-age kids. I focused on school-age collections as well. So that's where I really did a lot of work dedicated to that age population. And then from there, I moved to St. Paul, Minnesota, where I am right now as the Youth Services Manager of the St. Paul Public Libraries. So in that role, I do a couple of different things. I manage the children's department at the Central Library in downtown St. Paul, and I also work to support staff at all of our libraries. We have 13 libraries and a bookmobile. So staff that do youth-specific work, I do professional development with them, take in what are the things that they want to learn and grow in, kind of direct some of our bigger initiatives like summer reading programs, and I also do early learning initiatives throughout all of our libraries. So things around spaces in particular, trainings, directions that we really want to go as a library when we support young children. So, like I said, today I'm going to be focusing specifically on the school-age population and things that I didn't learn in library school, but that have been really helpful to me since graduating and starting in on my career. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is focusing on the why. And when we think about the why, that's really going to help us direct the ways that we invest our time and our money and our work effort. So when I say think about the why, I don't mean in an existential sense like why are you a librarian, but really in why are you making the decisions that you're making around programs and services that you are providing. And when we think about the why and when we're really grounded in the why, it helps avoid getting into the more is more trap, which I see in a lot of places, and I know I've experienced a lot, which is just churning out new programs over and over and over again. There's nothing wrong with new programs, but we don't want to be sort of on this hamster wheel of constantly just reacting and doing something new all the time. It's hard, it's stressful, it causes burnout, and ultimately it's not taking us in any sort of meaningful direction. So when I say think about the why, I don't mean why as in, oh, I saw this program somewhere and it looked cool, so I'm going to try it. Or, well, I need programs for a school break, so I'm just going to create some new programs. Those are certainly motivational reasons to do programs, but they don't quite go deeper to create some meaningful sense of the work that we're doing. So when I say think about the why, what I really mean is, say patrons have told you that they really enjoy art programs, or maybe you know that your local school has been cutting some funding for arts, and so you want to provide art programming that's going to give kids a chance to engage in creating art with their hands, right? Maybe you decide you want to do a coding workshop because you want kids to experience some hands-on interest-based learning related to technology. Maybe you are starting a book club and you really want your book club to focus on helping kids engage with the joy of reading. Maybe the reading they're doing in school isn't necessarily promoting this idea of reading for fun. It doesn't feel joyful for them. But you really want to promote this idea that reading can be a joyful experience. So when you think about those kind of whys, that's going to really help ground your programs. It's going to help you create sort of a meaningful underlier that's really going to give you some stable ground to build off of. And it's also going to help you message and tell the story of your program, whether that's communicating with your supervisor or your director as to kind of why you're moving in that direction, or maybe it's helping you share that information with people who might have questions or concerns about your program. Say the format of your program is that kids get to decide or vote on the books that they're reading because you want them to feel really engaged and empowered in this process. You want them to feel like they get a say. But maybe some other staff members or some parents say, well, these books don't have enough literary merit. We want you to focus on some Newbery classics. Or, oh, we'd really love if you could add this or that into the mix. Now, not saying that those aren't good books that kids might experience the joy of reading while they're diving into, but you might be able to help people understand perhaps why the books that you and your kids are selecting are being the choices over other choices. And so you can share with them that your book club really isn't focused on literary merit. It's really focused on the joy of reading, and you want to empower kids to make those decisions for themselves and understand that they really have a say in what they're reading for fun and what kind of joyful experiences that they want to have. So whatever your why is, think about it, continue to iterate on it. It's not going to be something that you identify necessarily and then that's it forever. It's not a fixed thing, but really keep that in your mind as you're making your decisions about the services that you're providing and the programs you're doing. Really understand why it is that you're making those choices. All right. The next piece that has been really a continual learning journey for me, but has been very, very helpful, is learning about mental health and trauma. So if you are planning to work in a public library, I dearly hope you know that you are going to be working with people that have a really wide variety of experiences. And with those experiences could come issues, challenges, trauma that they're carrying with them. And no matter where you are, whether you're in an urban area or you're in a tiny rural town, you are guaranteed going to be working with kids that have experienced some kind of trauma in their life. And that trauma is going to come out in some of their behaviors. So when we talk about trauma, one of the sort of big studies that informs some of these conversations is called the Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACEs study. If you haven't heard about this yet, chances are you will. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of what this study is and how it informs the way we see trauma. So this study happened in 1995, and it surveyed 17,000 adults to see whether they had experienced certain things in their childhood. So the specific list of things that this study looked at are the following. I have a list that I'm going to read for you here. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, intimate partner violence, having a mother treated violently, substance misuse within the household, household mental illness, parental separation or divorce, or an incarcerated household member. So what the people running this study found is that about 40% of the participants had experienced 2 or more ACEs within their childhood. So the ACEs were those things that I just read just now. So that shows us that a huge number of people experience some sort of significant traumatic event when they're children. And that has a big impact on how they behave and their health outcomes later in life. But it also has a really big impact about how they behave when they're kids. So when kids exhibit negative behavior, things like aggression, disrespect, anger, often what they are actually feeling and may not know it is fear or anxiety. So these are the kids that have the most challenging behaviors. They can be really hard to work with, but they're also the kids that need our support the most. So while you are continuing to develop yourself into your career, take any opportunity you can to learn about trauma, to learn about mental health, to learn about those adverse childhood experiences and what it looks like to support kids who may have experienced something like that. The social work and the mental health fields are great places to look for information about this because they're doing a lot of research and a lot of work, and they have a lot of historical knowledge about what it looks like to work with kids that have experienced these things. Now, I want to be really clear that in doing this kind of research and learning these things, we're not learning to be counselors, and that's not a role that we have within the library, right? So learn these things and learn them in a way that means you are trauma sensitive, which means that you have a certain level of knowledge about how to interact with kids with trauma. And that's going to really help you be the best supporter that you can of them. Now, another piece, kind of the other side of the coin in learning about that, is that you're also going to need to learn about boundaries and what it looks like to create some internal boundaries. Libraries, like I'm guessing a lot of other helping professions, are full of people that care deeply about the people that they serve and often overinvest in those people in ways that aren't healthy for them as individuals and aren't healthy for those patrons. Research shows us that kids who have experienced trauma are most resilient when they have a lot of different positive relationships in their lives. It's not just one person, it's a lot that are coming together to create that resilience and success in a child. And the library is a place where they can create those positive relationships. You can be a positive, encouraging relationship for them. And what you need to do in learning about trauma is kind of, like I said, two sides of that coin. How do you do that in a way that's really supportive of them and their needs, but is also recognizing of the boundaries that you have to set up for yourself as a helping professional? All right, last piece that I want to talk about is when you're working with kids, you don't have to make it easy. Kids are learning throughout their lives. Adults are learning throughout their lives too. And a big piece of that learning is actually learning how to learn. When kids go into school, they have a structure that helps them learn. But that structure doesn't often make it explicit that learning isn't just doing your homework or listening to what your teacher says or following instructions. Learning is really about trial and error, perseverance, being challenged and continuing to work toward your goal, working with other people and collaborating, using your creativity in order to solve problems. It's all of those things, and kids are really learning what it means to do that. And when they're in the library, you can provide a lot of opportunities for kids to experience those challenges in a pretty safe, low-stakes environment. So just remember that whenever you're interacting with a child, that's an opportunity for them to have a learning experience. And you can turn that into a learning experience that really empowers them. So if a kid is looking for a book, teach them how to use the catalog. Explain to them how to, or show them how to find something in the fiction section or the nonfiction section, point out the layout of the library to help them be successful. If a kid is playing with Legos and they say they can't figure something out, remind them that they can, that it's just about continuing to try and sometimes failing and then keep going again. Maybe tell them to bring in some friends and work with a group of people on it. Really encourage them to take control over the problem solving that they are doing. And take opportunities to do that with their caregivers as well. So a lot of times you'll see with young children and with older children, caregivers step in a way that really means they're taking over the learning and the kid is kind of left onto the side to just watch. And what we want to do is really empower caregivers to understand that learning is often about the process, not the final product. And so you could even, in programs that you have, if there are adults around, give them a challenge to support the learning that their kid is doing by asking questions or being available to make suggestions, but not to do it themselves, to really let the kid be the one that's directing the work and the learning that's happening. When we think about schools, schools are really a very testing-heavy environment. When we think about the general environments that a lot of kids live in, things are pretty immediately available to them. And so really what I see the library's role, especially now in this sort of continued immediate gratification, test-focused environment that surrounds them almost all the time, is to be that safe space where they can come and they're not getting a grade. They can't fail and have it impact them in a way that's going to influence their educational future. They just get to fail and try again with an adult that's going to support them and tell them really they can do it. When we think about those kids that have experienced trauma, this is especially important. Those kids may already have created an internal narrative that says, I can't do it. I'm not smart enough. I'm going to screw it up. I'm going to fail. And so those kids especially, we want to see them in the library and we want to support them and hopefully start to change or challenge some of those internal narratives to move toward a place where they say, I can do it, or I don't know the answer now, but I know how to keep moving forward and keep trying to figure it out. So those are the things that in reflecting that I feel have really been useful to me in continuing to move forward working with school-age kids. So thanks very much for having me. If you have any questions or you want to follow up, Marge will share my email address with you, and I'm more than happy to continue talking about this. So feel free to shoot me an email if you'd like to. Best of luck as you continue through library school and on your career journey, and I hope that you all have a great rest of your semester. Thanks. Bye.